Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast. It is an off day, scheduled off day for the Cubs. It is Monday, June 10th. That means Magic Wand Monday will be coming up. Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, and Cody Delmendo. Joey running the ones and twos over there. Gary Ross already fired up about trying to get some trade ideas going for this Cubs team. We'll go through we'll go through some of the names that have been floated out there, some of them by us in October. We'll go through other names that have been rumored, that have been thrown out there. And we also want to talk about what's been going on with the Cubs, especially over the weekend in the last couple of series. So I ask you, Cody Delmendo, and I don't know if we have time for this, but how you feeling about the Cubs? Because here's my thing. We all agreed on something I said, right? And this is very rare. We all agreed. I said 9 games against the Reds and White Sox. It's time for this team to start making some hay. Take advantage of the schedule. This is a part of your schedule where you should dominate, right? And we're like, wow, 7 wins would be disappointing. 8 wins would be disappointing. They went 4-5. So I ask you, is this rock bottom? Despite yesterday's win, have the Cubs now hit rock bottom? Or could it get worse?
I think it could still get worse.
There's definitely potential. It could have been worse than 4-5 if you really think about it. They had to come back twice against the White Sox. They needed miracles against the White Sox. They had to come back twice against the White. It could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. Even if they lost one game to the White Sox, that would have felt way worse, right?
Can you imagine 2-7? 2-7 against the Reds and White Sox?
Cody doesn't even want to think about it.
I mean, I know the sugarcoating is this team is a playoff spot, yada, yada, yada. They're right there. They've got it. But if you took this schedule, and it's not just one game, and you looked at it at the beginning of the season, said they're going to play the Reds and the White Sox, and you're going to say they almost went 2-7, and they did go 4-5, I don't know how you couldn't say it is. Well, if it's not rock bottom, this season's going in the toilet fast.
It's not rock bottom because a year ago on this date, they were 10 games under. All right? So I've certainly seen worse. But listen, this is what I'm pissed about, all right? Just let me
start the counter.
Give me 10 minutes, all right? This godforsaken organization. They you know the definition of insanity? That's what this organization has been doing for 3 years. And Brennan put it perfectly on yesterday's recap show with Corey. Like, we're in year 4 of the Jed Hoyer era. They have yet to make any kind of bold, impactful move to put the team over, the top to be a clear division contender, division winner. And at the same time, they're in the top 10 of payroll. Make that make sense. Have they made good moves? Has the front office made good moves to set the organization up for success? Yeah, like Ben Brown, Hayden Wisniewski, the Michael Busch trade.
Shota,
signing Bellinger on the Prove It deal and then re-signing him. And I know he's not here anymore, but the Stroman deal was a good deal. And extending Nico and Ian Happ. They've done good things. But at the end of the day, results are going to start to matter. Fans for the last 2 years, in 2022 and 2023, I don't think any fans came into a season with any expectations like they did this year. And so when you're saying what you're saying, Luke, about have we hit rock bottom when we're 2 games under 500, I can understand why some people think we have, because the expectations this year were higher, despite the fact that when you look at the roster, there's only a few things different about it compared to last year. Adding Shota, you lost Stroman, you had Amaya and Gomes as your catcher, and last year you had Tucker Barnhart, you had Mancini and Hosmer at the beginning of last year. Like, you've actually had good production at first base this year. Michael Busch, legitimately, like, as far as like WRC plus, is the best player on this team right now.
Which is a problem, actually.
I don't know if it's definitely a problem. All I'm saying is that you're getting good production out of first base.
Yeah,
or wherever the hell they're playing.
It's not a problem that he's playing well. It's a problem that he's top of the list.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've had defensive issues at third base, and it's not just Morel. Madrigal took a massive step back at third base on defense this year. You just go on Baseball Savant and look it up yourself. And then just the entire team defensively. I mean, they're at the bottom of the league, near the bottom of the league in defensive run saved and all those defensive metrics, okay? And this team brands itself on being good on defense. And then they find ways to really make me want to pull my hair out when it comes to running the bases, all right? Like, it's all insanity at this point to me. It's like I wake up every day and hope for something different, and then it's not. Even yesterday was kind of hard to like just be happy about a win, because you lost 3 or 4 against a team that you're better than. On paper, the Cubs are better than the Reds. I don't care what anyone says. On paper, they're better than the Reds. All right, and then it took miracles, like you said, Luke, to beat the White Sox. Like, give me a break. Like, what is it? 21. Yesterday was the first time in 21 days a starter for the Cubs got a win, even though I don't give a shit about win-loss records for pitchers. Like, that's ridiculous. They have to play better. That's just the fact of the matter. Should they have done certain things in the offseason to make the team better? Yeah, but they're still a team that should be, above 500 and should be not 6.5 games back in the division. In some ways, they're fortunate to only be 6.5 games back in the division, considering how good Milwaukee has played. But they got swept by the Phillies last week, and they managed to lose yesterday with the Cubs winning. So the Cubs picked up a game. Like, the Cubs are... You look at the roster, like I said, they're better than this. They're better than 2 games under 500. But you know what? I can say that for another... How many more weeks do I get to say that and hope that things are going to work out and be better? Like, what? 3, 4? Because if we get into mid-July and they're still like this, like, I don't think they're going to be selling massive assets, but, like, what's the point of even adding on then whenever your team is just like, meh? Depends on where they're at in the wild card, I guess. But, like, it's not a team that I want them to go all in on and try and make a real contender. And it's just like, it shouldn't be like that here in year 4. It shouldn't. Like, that's the biggest problem I think that a lot of fans have. Like, people like me have been patient for 2.5, 3 years. I accepted what they did at the trade deadline in 2021. I've been as patient as a human being can possibly be patient for this organization. And it's just like, again, they're a little bit better at this point right now than they were last year, but it's just not good enough. It's not good enough. The standard was set higher in 2016, man. They've set it themselves. So that's my biggest frustration. It's just like you said, the schedule is easier in June, and they're just the same thing. If it's not one thing, it's another. The offense, it's so inconsistent, and then they hurt themselves on the base paths, or Miguel Amaya can't block a damn baseball on a strikeout, and it leads to runs coming in. Like every possible bad thing that's happened for this team, you just sit and wait and see if something worse can happen. That's essentially what it has felt like since May 1st. And I can understand like bad stretches, 10, 15 game stretches, but it's been a month, and like what? It's June 10th. It's been 40 days of this bullshit, brother. Like
Will, close your ears or cover your ears.
I'm fed up.
Earmuffs.
I'm fed up. I wasn't lying in the Slack channel the other day when I was like, fuck this team, fuck this organization right now. They are not worth my time. Sorry, Luke's son. I'm so fed up. I'm absolutely fed up with all of it. And in some ways, I'd rather watch the White Sox because at least there's no expectations for them. It makes it easier to just deal with in some sick way. In some sick way, it's actually easier to deal with that because at least I will know that they are going to lose. But every single day, I'm waking up and I'm telling myself, this is the day that this team's going to turn around and play better. This is the day. And then they just find a way to just ruin my goddamn life every single day. Even yesterday in a win, they still find a way to make me want to pull my hair out. And this is what a mid team with projections to win 83 to 85 games will do to you. And I understood it last year. Obviously, the expectations were lower than that the year before. But again, year 4 of the Jed Hoyer era. I'm sorry. I don't care what the projections say. I expect better, and we should demand better as a fan base, and even you two. That's just the fact of the matter.
Even you two.
Wait.
Ryan,
I'm sorry for cursing once again.
Is there anything you'd like to say, Ryan, before we do our first ad break?
Well, I had about eight or so minutes on that.
I was going to say my brain jumbled when he said he'd rather watch the White Sox.
Right.
I don't know if I could get past that. I'm going to disagree with you on that because there's no way in hell I'd rather watch the White Sox be as bad as they are. But
twice a year, at least it's a win.
Sure, but
two of the most exciting games of the year.
I get from a fan perspective where Cody's coming from because, despite having a better record right now than they did a year ago, the seasons felt pretty similar as far as they had a good April, May tanked, and now they're trying to make up ground on whether it's Milwaukee or whatever, and they are closer in the wild card race. Obviously, the season's far from over. Record wise, they're in a better spot because it's hard to be in a worse spot as they were last year. I think today they were 8 games under 500 last year, and they're only 2 games under 500 now. So barely better. But I will, to Cody's point, it is hard to watch this team pretty much every game.
And that's the point of why I'm talking about the White Sox. You just know that they're bad. So it's there's no every loss that Sean and Herb have to watch. It sucks, but it's they know that it's coming. They know that they are expecting it. That's all I'm saying. Of course it's not as fun to watch them, but all right,
Cody, we got to get the water bottle out for Cody so Ryan can finish this
so
thought.
I can ever talk
Spray him
again.
with the water, but cool him off over there.
Let me yell for another 45 minutes. Screw this.
Okay, Ryan.
I don't even remember where I was at. I don't know. It is hard to watch this team the last few weeks because whether it's the offense not being great, the starting pitching has still been good, but not as I think it's taken a little bit of a step back. Just in there's been more games where the starting pitching hasn't been able to keep them in the game, while the offense has stunk. Or the bullpen's had a couple blow-ups there. So it is a lot of the parts are not all working at the same time. It feels like they've had some bright spots in there, but not enough to where you feel. I think the main point is they may be in a better spot than they were a year ago, but they're not giving you They're not giving you a ton of signs of hope that they're turning the season around. Even though I've said it that I still think they can, and I still think they can be a playoff team. You're not getting many signs that hey, this team is breaking out of a funk. They're turning it around. There's some small signs, but it doesn't. They just haven't given proof that everything's going to start clicking again and they're going to turn the season back around. When last year, when it happened, it just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Where they just started winning baseball games. And I don't know if they can do that again this year. They might just have to because right now the signs that things are turning aren't there.
Well, it's what we've been talking about, right? They're not doing all the little things that they've done in the past that the team was built on. Good base running, good defense. They're terrible at both. And the stat that Cody gave about 21 days since a starter had picked up a win, that's not on the starters, obviously, if you're thinking about it. That's because the starters aren't around when the game's being decided. Not their fault.
Yeah.
It's because you're not scoring enough runs to let the starter be in there and the game's been decided. It's because every game's decided in the 8th or 9th inning because you're scoring 1 run, 2 runs, 1 run, 2 runs. It's not enough offense. So that's something to keep in mind when we go into the Magic Wand Monday segment. Although at the beginning of the season, a lot of people wanted different starting pitchers, the starting pitching is not the problem on this team. It's the gold standard of this team right now. But things that we thought were the foundation of this franchise, they aren't good enough at. Not even close. Every game you can see something where you say, that's bad base running. Every game you can say, that's poor defense. Every game you can say those 2 things. And if you're playing in close games and those 2 things are bad, in addition to the fact that your offense is struggling, well, that's how you end up below 500. And that's where they're at. That's just the reality of it. Despite the fact that they might be in the hunt for a playoff spot because half the league now gets into the playoffs.
I'm sorry for
hyperbole.
All my cursing.
Yeah.
I'm just
you owe Will an apology.
I'm just frustrated with the fact that this team isn't doing the things that they're supposed to be good at. You can suck on offense all season and be good at pitching like I thought they were going to be, but the bad base running, the bad defense, I mean, Saturday was just the perfect example, man. You know, Justin Steele enters that inning with a no-hitter, and because Miguel Amaya can't stop the ball and it gets past him and it leads to that inning extended, you know how many outs he got that inning?
And
5.
That was after the pickoff.
That was after the pickoff that failed. Yeah. All right? He got 5 outs that inning himself and allowed 2 runs. And you know what's even more messed up? That those ended up being earned runs to Justin Steele, and they shouldn't have been. It was absolutely like MLB. Make it make sense to me. All right, though, things like that are what angers me the most. Yes, the offense isn't elite, and it's not. You know, you're going to get a mixed bag from it all season, especially if you're not going to go and get a guy like Juan Soto like I would have liked them to do, or especially if, you know, guys like Bellinger and Seiya aren't hitting their stride like we've seen them before, you know. But, like, the little things, the thing that they, like Luke said, that they brand themselves on, that they did so well last year, they haven't done that this year. It hasn't just been like a few weeks of it. It's been since opening day, man. So
it's been since September, actually, because those things started unraveling in September last year too, right? Like, they did them well, and then all of a sudden everything went wrong. I'll tell you what's going to make Cody feel better.
Nothing.
A splash of Penrose Seltzer. Seltz-Ups.
That does make me feel
See, I told you. Hard seltzers with real fruit, led by Lemon Seltz-Up, a national gold medal winning hard seltzer with real lemons. They created our unique twist on a lemon shake-up with house-made hard seltzer, pureed lemons for a throwback to warm weather and county fairs. Also available in lemon tea-up, a half-and-half inspired hard seltzer. Just released this year is Transfusion Seltz-Up, inspired by a popular golf cocktail with grape, ginger, and lime. Oh, delicious. Penrose is available at your local beverage retailer, or visit Penrose's taproom in Geneva, beautiful little town. For more information, go to penrosebrewing.com or follow them on social media at Penrose Brewing. With the hot weather coming, those Seltz-Ups will be real nice and refreshing.
Yeah, something else will be nice and refreshing this summer is going to be Sunnyside.
Oh, yeah.
Our friends at Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary are here to elevate your summer. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. They have a crazy selection with over 100 different strains to choose from, with easy online ordering and in-store pickup. Wherever you are in Illinois, Sunnyside has a location for you. They have spots as far south as Champaign and as far north as South Beloit. Stop in the store nearest you for expert guidance from their staff, or select from quality lines like Cresco or Florical. I'm picking up Mindy Segal's award-winning chocolates at Sunnyside, and you can too by heading to sunnyside.shop and use code CHGO, that's HICHGO, at checkout for 35% off brands like Cresco, Good News, and more to elevate your first purchase. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders.
All right, very nice. Let's get right to Magic Wand Monday, because if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, we started doing these in the off season, and some of the things we threw out were crazy because it's Magic Wand Monday, and you could take a magic wand and make whatever you wanted to happen. One of the guys we threw out was at October.
It was at the end of October.
Vlad Guerrero, and the only reason we threw out Vlad Guerrero then was because I said you got to start looking for teams that have underachieved, right? And then Cody's like, what about Vlad Guerrero? I'm like, he's also underachieved. And that's a guy that might be available. Like sooner or later, the Blue Jays are a team that will have to shake up what they're doing. They can't have a roster of would-be stars that looked like every year I would pick the Blue Jays as my team to win the American League because I think, well, this is the year the Blue Jays are going to put together, and every year they would disappoint. Well, they're there again. And so now you're starting to see reports of the Cubs might be interested in Vlad Guerrero. I don't know how legit they are. Let's just take the deals for what they're worth. And for this segment alone, let's just talk about guys on the Blue Jays because possibly, maybe not yet, but possibly there'll be a team that will say, you know what, we're on the fringe. We're on the fringe of a playoff team, but realistically, look at us in this division. We're going nowhere. We want to get to the top, and we're going to have to shake things up. So Vlad Guerrero, let's just take him first. Would Vlad Guerrero, a trade for him, would he improve the Cubs enough to be worth the prospects you might have to give up? Now, he's a 1-year deal, but he's ARB eligible at the end of the year, correct?
Believe so.
And $19 million. So now, already, you're talking about the luxury tax stuff. I don't see how they're going to avoid it, but that's a separate conversation is like, is it really worth going forward, like Cody would say? Like, is a Band-Aid, if you're looking at Vlad Guerrero as a Band-Aid, is a Band-Aid worth this team's time?
I don't think Vlad Guerrero is a Band-Aid. If you're
well, how long would you have him for? How long would you have him for?
Until through the end of 2025, and then the conversation of an extension.
And he does fit a profile of what you need, right? If you look at his stats this year, he could play first base, he could play third base, he could DH. He's hitting .292. He's still a young guy who you could catch. He hasn't fallen like Cody Bellinger fell. But here's a guy who was, if you had named 5 guys in baseball at one time, Vlad Guerrero Jr. was certainly in that list.
He looked like he was like just continuing.
Well, I thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer.
I will say, he's bouncing back compared to last year.
He's hitting pretty well this year.
He's a 136 WRC plus. He was 118 last year. He's already at the amount of Fangraphs WARs he was last year at 1.3. And, the 383 on base percentage, 292 batting average, great. The slug is the only thing that kind of scares me because what's this offense need? They need a guy who can
put up
hit
numbers,
who can hit 40 home runs, man. And he hit 26 last year and 32 the year before that. And at this point, it's June 10th and he has 7.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
it is a bigger ballpark, but yes.
That's the only thing that scares me is okay, if he's going to hit for you, a 292 average is great, but he's slugging 424. For someone like him, he's got to slug over 500, man.
The power's down for him this year for sure.
And it's been down for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
He slugged 480 in 2022 and 444 last year. This is a guy who hit 48 home runs in 2021 and is steadily gone down since. That doesn't mean that I don't have belief that he can get back to something like that, but you can't just ignore that. And to me, at the very least, I don't think the package is as insane as what some people might think, especially since he only has 1 year of control after this year. Mm-hmm. And if the Blue Jays are going to hold on to him until the end of July, so you get a year and a half, I don't think trading for Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a Band-Aid. I think it is, if you're trading for him, he's a guy that you think is going to be on your team long-term for years to come. This is a guy that you're going to actually try and extend to have on this team to be a middle-of-the-order bat for you for the next 5 years at least.
And you believe he will bounce back. I agree.
He's at 25 years old. He hasn't even hit his prime yet, right? I don't know what's going on at Rogers Center or whatever. I don't know what the ballpark is like that. I have to hit up my friend Jordan. I always forget how to pronounce her name, but she's the biggest Blue Jays fan on Blue Jays Twitter. I'd have to hit her up and be like, what's wrong with Rogers Center? Why is Vlad Jr. not hitting any homers, right? Yeah. I don't know, but all I know is that the slug numbers have gone down the last couple of years, but the fact that he's 25, the fact that he's still healthy. I mean, he played 156 games last year. He played 160 the year before that. He's been healthy this year. He's still giving you quality at bats because he's striking out only 17% of his at bats and walking 12.5% of his at bats. He's still giving you great at bats. He's still getting on base, but is he going to change this Cubs offense any more than it already is? The likelihood of that is yes, but the slug does concern me.
So would Gary in the chat, shout out to Gary, says,
Gary.
Hey, what about it'd probably take 2 top 100 prospects, maybe Triantos, Alcantara. Would you be willing to give up 2 top 100 prospects? Would Owen Casey, a Canadian, be a guy you're willing to give up to get Vlad Guerrero? Owen Casey and Triantos?
Triantos more would to me, considering how.
Oh, I would be willing to give up Triantos.
Yeah. Like,
Owen Casey's.
Owen Casey's.
It's starting to get. One. Now it's starting. You're looking at it going, well, I don't know.
The left-handed power that he has. Like, you don't have a lot of that on this team. I don't know. I really don't know. I like.
Right. I mean,
that's a tough because Owen Casey's what your number 4 prospect right now. Triantos is right up there too. He's top 100, but I think that's a tough question.
Yes.
Again, Triantos in a deal interests me a lot more. Casey is someone that would be tougher to give up for sure.
I'm the wrong guy to ask because I would have given up Hap and Wisdom for Moncada.
That's true, he did.
Mistake by me. My bad.
And a mistake by Herb for not accepting that trade.
A mistake by Herb for not accepting it. But listen, bottom line, whether we want him or not, these are the types of decisions that Jed needs to eventually make. These are the bold type of moves. He has to identify, is Vlad Guerrero going to be this guy moving forward? And if he is, then I can afford to give up Owen Casey, or I can afford to give up Alcantara and Triantos. Sooner or later, you're going to have to part with either some of the prospects or you're going to have to sit there and accept the results. Right. And so far it hasn't been good. So catcher's obviously been another spot. Cap reported that they're interested in Danny Jensen, the catcher. Now, he's on a 1-year deal, a lot less money, 5.2. Is he somebody, I think a lot of people believe that catcher sort of surprisingly has become one of the deepest holes on the team. I knew going into the season that first and third were question marks, but I'll admit I didn't, for whatever reason, bad on me, I didn't realize catcher was going to be this bad of a black hole. Gomes has gotten worse and worse, and Amaya's ascension to the next catcher on the Cubs has certainly slowed down. So what about trading for a 29-year-old catcher who was born in Elmhurst?
I mean, for me, I'll say this, with how bad the catcher position has been for the Cubs, this weekend it was actually the best weekend for Cubs catchers, except for Amaya's, that pass ball or whatever that I was talking about earlier. He actually hit the ball well this weekend, almost hit a game-tying homer. I thought Gomes had a good game.
2 inches from the top of the ball. Yeah.
Gomes almost hit he should have had 3 hits the other day in the game that he started, did drive in a run. So you got a little bit more offensive production from them this weekend. Would love to see that continue, obviously. But for me, with catchers, the catching situation, it's been more about the defense all year than it has been the offense. I legitimately could care less what they're hitting, but the fact that they haven't been able to throw out any runners, the fact that it feels like Amaya is letting a ball pass him every week, at least once, and it being a crucial moment, gives me heartburn. And Gomes is 30. He's going to be 37 sometime in the next 30 to 60 days, right? So you're going to have to move on from that at some point.
Yeah.
So obviously I still have concerns about catcher. As far as Jansen, he's going to be a free agent after this season. So he's a rental, I believe, right?
He's free agent 2025. But he's someone that you could
look at in the offseason because you're going to have this. By the way, unless you sign somebody that's going to be a multi-year catcher, this problem's going to be there in the offseason.
Yeah, he's 29 years old right now, so he's not.
So and when I look at his numbers, it's not like they're jumping out to me in any particular way. Like, he's having a great year this year for his standards. He's having his best year. Well, I guess 2022 was a good year for him. He had a 141 WRC plus in 2022, but
down to 116 last year. He's on track to, probably put together his best or second best season this year. So, like, I would honestly rather have him of all the catchers that are available. He is the one that I would particularly like to have, but the thing about catchers and bringing them in season, it was the same thing with Contreras and why the Astros didn't end up taking him at the deadline.
Does it impact your pitching style?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, how much do the Cubs desperately need to bring in a new guy, and then how long is it going to take that person to get acclimated? And it's like they need to do it now or more so now than later, because if you bring in a guy at the end of July or first week of August, you have to give them time to get acclimated, and by the time they finally do, who knows where the team is,
the price is higher now than it might be later, most likely.
Yeah.
I think
I particularly would love Jansen more so than any of the other ones, but as bad as the Blue Jays are, they're still kind of in it right now.
Yeah, no,
that's the problem.
That's been my point. Is like everyone that wants the Cubs to go out and make these trades now, like some of the teams that the Blue Jays are only a couple games out of a wild card spot. The Astros have worked their way back to, I think, like 4.5 back of a wild card spot, right? Like there's another team, the Mets even, right? I have a lot of people talk about Pete Alonso. The Mets are only a few games back of a wild card spot. Like expecting those teams to trade and especially when you're talking about some of these teams that just they want to win, like they aren't like tanking, like they want to win, and they have just had bad starts to the season. Like expecting those teams to just tank the year, trade away all their assets that they have, tradable contracts, whatever. Like it's June 10th. Like it is still kind of early for some of those teams to give up on the season. So to get them to trade some of those guys, you may have to overpay and to pick up to get them to. Trade those guys, even if they want to trade. They may not. They may just say no. We're not. Like we're trying to win this year and go for it. Like So like right now on June 10th, you may still have to wait a little while for these teams to decide. Like what, we're not winning this year. Maybe it's time to trade some of our assets,
which makes it tricky.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So Elias Diaz is the only one that I feel like maybe they could get right now because the Rockies are
bad,
really, really bad.
Hold that thought for the next segment as you tell us about Circus Sportsbook, Cody.
Circus Sportsbook. Guess who had Luka Doncic to make the first basket last night at plus 550? This guy. Guess who bet the under on the second quarter total points for last night's NBA Finals game? This guy. It went under by a half point.
Guess who was plus $150 last week? This guy.
Guess who made $150 last night himself?
Wow.
This guy.
Look at you guys go.
Was that your total for the week?
Yes.
At the week. Oh, see, so you're doing.
Yeah.
My bad.
I did make like $150 on the NBA Finals game last night. I live bet it 4 different times.
Wow.
All in Circus Sportsbook because they're one of my favorite apps to use. Their tight money line splits are what make them great because you can get the best odds because they strive to be a minus 110 split on their menu, unlike other sportsbooks, which may use a minus 115 or minus 120 split. They keep as little money as possible on large market bets compared to other books. They do not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other books who do limit winning players. I actually encourage bettors to download and explore all sports betting apps available so you can compare the lines from each sportsbook. And then their customer service is awesome because you don't have to talk to chatbots. I hate chatbots. Usually you talk to them via email.
How can I help you, Cody?
They get your situation, your issue fixed pretty quickly. All aspects of their app being run by the same team that runs the main Circus Sportsbook at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, the second greatest place in the world behind Wrigley Field. Download the Circa Sports Illinois app at circasports.com/Illinois-app to sign up today. Also be on the lookout for Circa events, watch parties, and tailgates. They're with us every Friday for Friday 120 Club. We'll be out there in the bleachers on Friday this week against the boring team in St. Louis. They'll be with us, so shout out to them. If you or someone you may know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Text GAMB to 833-234 or visit areyourreallywinning.com.
Listen, I love tight money line splits. Everybody knows that, but I also love Blue Moon. Some beers can say they're brewed for baseball, but only Blue Moon is brewed by baseball. Beer and baseball just go together, and no beer goes better than the one that was literally born in a ballpark. Blue Moon, created at Coors Field in Denver, Colorado. It's the natural choice all season long. I don't know if you've seen the forecast. We've got some hot weather on the way, folks. Hot weather. Summertime shy is here. Give me a Blue Moon to cool off this week. Nothing beats watching baseball, lounging by the pool, sitting by the lake, sitting in your backyard like a good Blue Moon. Blue Moon was brewed by baseball to give you a dose of nostalgia and give you an excited new season. A beer this good only comes around once in a Blue Moon, but you can enjoy it all season long. Bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon Belgian-style wheat ale. It's one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. It is Magic Wand Monday, so we're just throwing out ideas. We've heard some names. We've seen some reports. How are the Cubs going to fix this? 2 games under 500, and they just lost 3 out of 4 to the lowly Cincinnati Reds while barely beating the White Sox, the worst team in baseball. I shouldn't even say. What did they lose? 6 to the Reds? 5?
3, 5.
5 to the Reds? Yikes. All right, so we went through some of the big names that we've heard. The big rumors, Vlad Guerrero. Yeah, we started it. Will the Cubs finish it? We don't know if Jed was listening, but it seems like he might have been listening.
Credit to us.
Credit to us. Now, the name Cody mentioned before we went to the ad break was an all-star catcher, Elias Diaz of the Rockies. Now, there's a team that's totally out of it. Yeah, totally out of it. So, yes, they might be holding their asset a little bit longer, but if you give them the deal now, is that the catcher you want instead of Jansen? If you've identified that, yes, catcher is a place, regardless of what happens, we've got to improve that for this season and in the off season, both. So
he's actually hitting pretty well, better than I expected. When I just looked up his numbers, he had a 110 WRC plus. He's hitting 305, 353 on base, 442 slugging. Numbers are pretty good offensively. He's obviously a really good defensive catcher. He's been this year. His defensive rating, according to Fangraphs, is pretty good. So then he would be, like, he's a free agent, obviously, I believe, after this season. So he wouldn't be a long-term fix by any means, which considering, like, Amaya is still young, I still think there's room for improvement there. You may not need a long-term fix for a guy like Elias Diaz. You mentioned the Rockies they will sell, whether it's now or whether it's July 31st. Like, they're not a team that'll be going for it. And I don't know exactly what it would take to get Elias Diaz. I'd probably be less, or I guess it would just depend what the Blue Jays are asking for like Danny Jansen, but it would probably be less to get Diaz. And in my opinion, I would think that it would be less to get Diaz from the Rockies.
And they get Jansen in free agency?
Possibly, right? Like, I mean, that's a question for the offseason if we're looking at, like, fixes right now for this team to make this push. I think Diaz would be – it would seem to be an upgrade the way he's hitting, the way he plays defense. But like Cody said, and this is something that I've brought up as well, that it's just like it's not as easy to install a catcher mid-season. Yeah. Like, there's a reason why pitchers and catchers get to spring training early. There's a reason why catchers like to be there early in spring training and have all that time to get acclimated to catchers. And like Miguel Amaya last year when he came up, right? He was kind of getting acclimated to the pitching staff, but he also had taken spring training and worked with a lot of these guys because he was on the 40-man at that point. He was able to work with a lot of the pitching staff, so it wasn't a completely new staff when he came in last year. For Diaz, it would be, or for Jansen, it would be, right? Like, anyone that would come in from outside the organization would be a challenge to quickly get acclimated and learn how each pitcher ticks and how they like their games called, all that stuff. It takes time. So Obviously, the earlier you could trade for one of those guys and install them is better. But either way, it's still like 3 months until the end of the year. Like that kind of stuff would have to be moving quick for you to be like, okay, this was a really good trade. Now, again, I think a guy like Elias Diaz could do it because he has a good defensive catcher, has a good reputation, right? But it's not like a plug and play situation, especially for catchers, because it will take time to be able to get those guys comfortable on both sides, pitchers and catchers on both sides, to make that relationship and that working relationship as comfortable as possible.
Don't disagree, but the Cubs might be in a situation that it's so bad at catcher that they may have to do it anyway.
Sure, yeah, they may have to. But all I'm saying is,
right.
like, even
it's
if
a
they
tough position to do it at, but they might have to do it anyway.
Yeah, they may have to do it anyway, but it's just going to be. It's not going to be. It probably won't be perfect right away. Like, there may be some growing pains in that, and hopefully that's shorter than it could be.
So, I'll start with the offense with him. Plays for the Rockies, so everyone's always like Coors, right? His home away splits are actually really similar, but he actually has been better on the road than he has been at home. In some ways, like on the road, he has a 120 WRC plus, while at home he has a 99. So 20% difference. He has a higher OPS at home than he does on the road. Slug and on base percentage and batting average aren't too far off though. Walk rate's a little bit higher on the road than at home. Like, there's not a ton of difference there. So for anyone worried, thinking the offense has been better because of Coors, at least this year, I would say that that's not necessarily the case. As far as defense, he's tied for second in the league in catching framing runs with, I believe, 4. And then he's in the middle of the pack of, like, strike rate called or whatever on those borderline pitches. How much you want to believe in baseball savant with that, be my guess. I don't really know how they add all that up. I just look at it. It tells me that you're good at it, and that's all I can do.
Yeah, I mean,
because I'm no catcher. So
there's also like the framing aspect of it. It's like his last 2 years wasn't very good framing wise. Has actually improved a lot on that apparently this year. So
yeah, like I said, he has 4 this like the catcher framing runs. It's at 4, which is right behind one other player this year. He's tied for, like I said, for second. Yeah. Jose Trevino leads baseball with 6. He's tied with Cal Raleigh and Patrick Bailey with 4. So, and then like his strike rate called, he's like middle of the pack. So, when you compare that with Amaya and Gomes, like Gomes has been near the bottom in the league in terms of that type of stuff. He's tied for second to last in baseball catcher framing runs, and then his strike rate called is also 3rd in baseball, just ahead of Luke Maile and Tucker Barnhart. So Diaz would be an improvement on that as well, on those stuff. And again, to me, it's all about the defense more than the offense. I don't care about the offense. So, yeah, I mean,
it is about what you're giving up.
Sure.
Ultimately, and we don't know in any of these situations. We don't know what's been suggested. I saw in the chat somebody saying Mervis because they'll need a first. If this was just Mervis for Diaz, the deal would have been. If the Rockies were cool with Mervis for Diaz, the deal would have been done a long time ago.
I think
a long time ago.
Probably.
Yeah. I don't know who. I think the Cubs have plenty of guys in their top 30 that kind of are like the same. Like, I'm sure.
Would you give up Mervis, Canario, and someone from Single A
for Diaz? All 3? No way.
What are you going to do with all these guys?
Well,
you have nowhere to put Canario.
I'm not okay. Listen,
I just don't think. I don't know.
3 of those guys for for a catcher for a half season. Come on, Luke.
What do you think they're going to want right now? I think if you offered them Mervis and Canario, they'd be like, nah, we'll wait.
I disagree.
Because I'd be willing to give up Mervis and Canario yesterday.
Sure. Listen.
To improve the catching situation.
I mean,
what I was getting at is
use these prospects in some way, right? And if they don't have...
Unless you've got another team that's saying, I want Canario as the third piece in a bigger deal, and you're say, you know what I mean? Like, not him specifically.
I don't disagree with you that like you could like those guys are obviously on the table. I'm more of just saying like you're. I just think for a 33-year-old catcher for half a season, you don't send that much.
This early, I think you're trading more than you want to.
Yeah,
when I look at those two players, I just say to myself, neither one of them has a future with the Cubs.
I agree.
And my guess is the other teams know that too.
Yeah, well, and it's just generally harder to make trades this early. Like, it's not early in the season anymore, right? But like beginning of June, it's just harder to make trades because a team like the Rockies, do they probably know that they're not going anywhere and need to sell some pieces? Yeah. But do they also not want to limit the teams that are going to be asking and maybe even desperate for some of the guys on the roster? Yeah. That's why the trade deadline you just see deals happen all the time because teams get desperate, teams know what they need, have a little bit more data and information on what they need and are more willing to do that stuff then. And so that it's just a general, like, you don't see Luis Arias type trades in May, in June, whenever. Like those things are rare compared to how how things usually go down the weeks leading up to the trade deadline. So even with the Rockies, they may already know that, hey, we are not going to win this season. We are going to trade. But they may also be willing to wait because they want more suitors who are starting to get a little bit more desperate for things to come looking for trades, to come asking for guys.
What I was getting at is that you have enough guys in your top 30 that you could give away someone in there for this guy.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
You know what I mean? Like, and still be okay. Like, sure, you want if you want to give away Mervis, fine. And then I just don't necessarily agree with giving away Mervis and Canario in that trade. I'm saying giving away Mervis or Canario, and then one of those other guys that are maybe inside the top 30, maybe. Like, I just think that for considering the position that this guy plays, just think about the Contreras trade, for example, the one that didn't happen with the Astros. The Cubs, they had in line to get a pitcher from them that I think just was going to have Tommy John now, that just came out news recently. I forget how you say his name, so I don't want to say it, but it was a pitcher. And then the Astros said no because the whole process of incorporating a new catcher and all these things. Mm-hmm. I just think that even if the Cubs would have actually made that trade, if they would have been able to get that done, I think a lot of fans would have been disappointed by what they would have got back.
Well,
and Contreras
it's also
is
natural
not Diaz,
to overvalue what you know versus what you don't know, right? Like,
right. I know Contreras isn't Diaz. Like, Contreras is better than Diaz. I'm just saying that in this scenario, the position is so it's different compared to like an outfielder or an infielder.
All right, let me throw out a couple other names that we've either heard, whether it's in a chat or in a rumor or just been talked about on this podcast. Which of these do you like more than the other? And again, obviously the return package is a key part of it. Alex Bregman at third base. Pete Alonso obviously brings the offensive power that you're looking for. What does he have, like 14 home runs, something like that?
I can look.
Mason Miller, because I know the Godfather wants a closer. Mason Miller. So let's throw those three names out there. Of those three, if the package were equal that you were sending out, maybe different players, but like if the value that you were giving to get one of those guys, Mason Miller would be around longer, but there's the check on that is it's a reliever, and a reliever who throws hard. And I think the package would be the highest for him of any of those players because he's under contract. Pete Alonso, he does solve some offensive problems. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I mean,
if they're willing to trade yet.
Yeah, well, for the Mason Miller one, I guess we could talk Pete Alonso real quick. A guy that slugs, a guy that, and that's something that Jed always talks about. Is like you need slugging wins games, like home runs or extra base hits with guys out. Like putting up numbers in bunches helps you win games. The Cubs have been bad with runners in scoring position, obviously, but they're just not slugging near the top of the league, obviously he's someone that comes in and immediately improves your team in that area.
They've lost 14 of their 26, league-leading 26 one-run games. Yeah. Having that guy in the lineup probably would have impacted some of those one-run games.
Probably, yeah. So yes, it would absolutely improve the lineup, especially in the power slugging department. I don't know what they'd have to trade to get him. He's a free agent at the end of this year, I think, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
It would be another rental. And then you figure out what you do with the rest of the roster. What do you do with Cody Bellinger? What do you do with Michael Busch? Obviously, Cody Bellinger's going to play, right? But like that also, you have to figure out, like, is he going to end up staying in the outfield? Can he play more first base? Do you need a DH Pete Alonso? But then what happens with Michael Busch? And all? There's so much roster maneuvering that would come from it. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it because of that, because he is an improvement in your lineup. But there is definitely questions that come up with that as far as how do you use the rest, how do you construct the rest of this roster to make sure everyone you want to be playing is playing as much as possible. But the main point is he would absolutely be an improvement to the roster in an area of need.
He's the one obvious player that would provide you the most power of any player that you could potentially get. That's not even debatable. Like Vlad Guerrero would give you more years and might be a longer-term solution and might have a higher ceiling to help you long-term, obviously, than Pete Alonso. But right now, this season, Pete Alonso would hit more bombs for you than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, from a slugging perspective, sure. Like, he makes a ton of sense. I'm just not, like, interested in him, though. I'm really not.
Out.
I've been out on him since you asked me if I would trade Morel for him last year, and I said fuck no. All right.
Oh,
it's the third F-bomb for those
sorry,
counting.
Fourth maybe.
Sorry,
Fourth,
Will.
maybe.
Sorry, Kate.
Sorry, Cody's mom.
He just doesn't impress me, man. Like he hits some home runs, but he, like his walk rate not like K rate okay, it's a little below league average. His BABIP this year is below league average, which means he's probably due for some positive regression, right? I'm just 129 WRC plus is pretty good. I'm just thinking about the future, because if you're going to trade for him and the Mets actually trade him, they're going to want a big name. And if you're going to trade a big name, then you're going to have to re-sign this guy. And I'm just not a believer in this guy long term. All right? I'd rather have Vlad Jr. than him. I legitimately would. And even though Vlad Jr. only has one more year of control, he's still younger and you could still extend him. I'm not interested in extending a future 30-year-old first baseman / DH when you traded for Michael Busch this past offseason. And you have Bellinger who can play first too. At least with Vlad Jr., there's a future there. Pete Alonso, sure, he might still have some decent good years left in him, but as far as like overall value, he's gone down since his rookie year. Like he's been at best a 3.5 WAR player. You know what other 3.5 WAR players the Cubs have that everyone bitches about in our YouTube chat? Guys like Ian Happ. All right, like what is there to be like? He's not no superstar. He's a great home run derby guy. Like that's just how I feel about him. It's nothing against him. It's not me saying that he's a bad player. I just think that you have better options that could help, that will be better long-term from you than a future 30-plus-year-old Pete Alonso.
So that leads me to what I think will be the final question of this podcast, because it might take a little while. Is there anybody in the list that we've just gone through, whether it's Mason Miller, Alonzo, Diaz at catcher, Jansen at catcher, Vlad Guerrero, is there one guy out of that list that you think would turn the Cubs' fortunes around this season and make them, instead of a borderline team, help push them into, we can really be something, a World Series team, but really be better than we were last year, get into the postseason? Is there one guy that could do that by himself? I don't know the answer to that. Right now, for me, my gut feels like no. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't do the deal, but I also don't want them to go crazy making deals, because I think this roster might be flawed enough that it's going to take more than that.
I mean, we haven't even talked about relievers.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, only Miller, yeah.
The Mason Miller one is just, to me, it's more on the pipe dream side of things for me. Even if, the A's make him available, like truly decide to trade him this year, there's going to be a lot of teams that want a guy like that. The asking price is going to be high, and the fact that he could still be a starter someday. Not that I think he will ever be a starter. He's been really good as a closer, but I remember one of the reasons why he's been in the bullpen this year was because of health things, making sure he stays healthy. The A's had truly not ruled out him eventually being a starter again. Now, does that mean he will ever start for the A's again? That doesn't mean that at all, but I would have to think that idea would be part of trade talks. If for anyone looking at Mason Miller, if I'm the A's, I would absolutely be he could still be a starter someday too. So you're not just paying for a reliever, you're paying for a guy who could still start with electric stuff. If I'm the A's, I would absolutely use that as part of trade talks, trade negotiations.
And you're probably talking to teams that think they can win the World Series this year.
Yeah, exactly. So you're he's been such a good closer for the A's and just one of the better closers in baseball this year that the price to get him seems like it'd be really high. And I just don't know if the Cubs are the team that's paying that price for him. Yeah. I just don't see it myself. So
I don't either.
Everyone that wants Mason Miller, he may not even get traded. He could be he's not a free agent till 2030 or something like that. He could be an actual building block for the A's. So he may not even end up being traded, and if he does, it could be for an overpay, So Mason Miller,
sort of Luis Robert to a different degree.
It just feels like
Sox don't need to trade him.
It just feels like something that's not going to happen to me, at least for the Cubs.
I just don't believe that there's Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't make the deal. I want them to do something to spark this team, but I don't believe there's a single player out there that will take them from level C to level A. The only guys that can do that are on the roster. Bellinger, Morel, Suzuki, Swanson, Nico. Start playing up to your potential.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that are going to turn the Cubs season around if it's going to be turned around.
Yeah, it's guys
that are currently on the roster.
Guys that need to get back to performing as they should, as they were expected to. And as far as to answer your question, no, I don't think there's any one guy that changes the Cubs' fortunes around on his own. That probably takes a couple additions, 2, 3 maybe, and that's something that is going to be up to Jed to do, right? If he were to go out and trade for Vladimir Guerrero, that shouldn't be the only move he makes. It should be looking at another reliever or maybe one of those catchers, whether it's Jansen or Diaz, right? Trading for one guy, it shouldn't be the end of it. Not just because I don't think one guy immediately flips their season around, but also because it's just if you are truly invested in winning or interested in winning, where the holes are on this team, and one guy's not going to fill all that. You should be looking at multiple spots that you can upgrade. That should be what he does.
Vlad Jr. is the only one that I'm legitimately interested in as far as in the moment and in the future. You can add Jansen, you can add Diaz with your catcher situation, but we all still know long term that those guys aren't going to be part of the organization. And if you can get them on, if you can make a trade for them, it'll be a trade that, we'll talk about for a day and then we'll forget about it in a month. All right, we'll see. And if they bring some decent impact to the team, we'll be able to see it because they'll probably be better than what Miguel Amaya and Yan Gomes have given us overall, which is historically bad outside of this past weekend. All right, but if Vlad Jr. is a guy that you're going to have for next year, and then he's so young that why wouldn't you want to try and keep him around? If you legitimately care about taking that next step going into this offseason and going into the future, if you plan on being a real contender down the line, that is a guy that I think that could be here and could be part of that just because he is currently 25 years old. All right. Pete Alonzo, Mason Miller, I agree. He's a pipe dream, and I would love to have him. And he's going to cost so much. He'll cost more than, in some ways, he could cost more than what Luis Robert would cost, just because Luis Robert's 27 and Mason Miller is 23, 24, something like that, maybe 25 years old. But with all that control, Robert's got 3.5 years of control, and his issue has been injuries and stuff like that. When he's on the field, he's one of the best players in the league, right? So with Miller, he's been one of the best closers in baseball, right? And like you said, he can be the A's probably still thinking. He even thinks he's even openly said that he still wants to be a starter one day. So, I think that Vlad Jr. honestly is the most realistic one to me if it were to happen this year, and something that you can build on going forward. If you can get him in a trade, add one of these catchers as well, and see what happens the rest of the year, great. But you're still setting yourself up for the future after that. That to me, that's why it's important, and that's why it doesn't necessarily bother me if they win or not going forward. And what I mean by win the World Series. If they add them, I think they certainly make their playoff aspirations a lot more clearer. That's for sure. Yeah. You put him in the middle with Seiya, Bellinger, and Morel. That's a way better lineup with him in there, even with my worries about his slug. All right, but to have him in 2025 and then be able to keep him around would be a very impactful move. A thing that will show the fan base at least that they are trying to be good for years to come. And that's just been the biggest thing to me over this quote unquote rebuild I was told wasn't a rebuild. Is are we trying to win or not? You make a trade like that, that gives me a little bit more hope of the future, not just this year, but years to come too. And then I think, you'd probably have to send at least one or two of your top 100 guys, but you have plenty of them. And I don't think you're going to have to send a Cade Horton or maybe a Casey, but I still think no matter what, if you keep developing and drafting the way that you have, we'll get over it. To add a guy like Vlad Jr. to this team would be a major move for the Jed Hoyer era, and would probably start to send me towards a more positive outlook on the front office.
Credit to us for coming up with the idea.
Yeah,
there's a reason I was sitting here in October and I was like, Luke, we should talk about Vlad Jr.
I just think, and I would agree. I think he's a overall positive. Would overall have a positive impact on this lineup now in the future. A guy like Vlad. There is the concern of the way the power numbers have gone down. And that's the last 3 years, the way they've dropped a lot since 2021, right? So there's definitely concerns with that, especially when we just talked about being able to slug, being able to hit more home runs, power numbers, all that is something the Cubs just haven't had enough of this year, last year. Not that Vlad can't do that, but it just in my mind, a guy like Pete Alonso would for this season seems like he would add or be more of an improvement in that area than Vlad would, but he's also on an expiring contract, right? So there's definitely going to be risks and concerns with any of these guys that you're going to trade for. But at the end of the day, I do still think they have to do something.
They got to do something.
I'm not trying to argue over Pete Alonso or Vlad Jr. They clearly would make positive contributions to the team. I'm just thinking about this year and next year and beyond. If this team trades for Vlad Jr. and then they don't try to keep him around beyond 2025, then I will be joining Godfather in our stomping outside the marquee about ownership. All right, that's to me that's the perfect one of the perfect moves that would set this team up for a lot of success. Because what have we talked about for years since we started? This team doesn't have an all-star or a superstar caliber player, and Vlad, that is what Vlad is. He is a star player. I know, again, the slug numbers have been down, but overall as a hitter, he's been pretty good. And that's why I'm questioning what's going on in Toronto. Bo Bichette has also been bad this year too. What's going on there? Does he need a change of scenery? We've seen it with so many other guys. Maybe things are just, the vibes are bad there, and he's just I can't explain it. It's not measurable, but we've seen other guys get a fresh start somewhere else, and then you really see them break out. And I feel with his youth and his contract, maybe that could be someone for the Cubs.
Cubs need to identify who they're going to invest in, whether it's trade or contracts down the line, all that type of things. We do want to remind you could invest less than $100. You ready for this deal?
$99, actually.
$99. All you have to invest. End of the month, on the 29th, we have a party bus that's going to go right from basically Wrigley Field. Almost Home is where it's going to start.
Yep.
hang out at Almost Home at 9 a.m. on the 29th. Then the next stop will be in Waukegan at Circa Sports. Hang out there for a little bit. You could also just start your day there. You could join us just at Circa Sportsbook. But either way, party bus, drinking on the way. You get up there. You get to Milwaukee. It includes your ticket to the game. And we're going to tailgate in the parking lot when we get there as well. Take over what we like to now call Blue Moon Ballpark up in Milwaukee. That's the idea behind it.
Yep.
$99.
Can't beat that.
Hang out, have fun, get a ticket, go to the game, watch the Cubs beat the Brewers, close the gap on first place.
Hopefully.
That would be that'd be a big series for him to close the gap on first place.
Either way, you're going to feel pretty good by the time you get there. That's the way it feels. So make sure you get signed up to that. We don't want to run out of spots for that. People started doing it. Grab 3 friends and be like, hey, man, for $99 each, we can go. The booze is included. The tickets included, and the tailgate's included.
Yeah.
The vibes are included.
The vibes are always included.
Always included.
I can't wait, whether the Cubs are good or bad. It's always nice to go to Milwaukee and help keep their electricity bill on.
Anyways, tomorrow we have a pre- and post-game show as the Cubs take on the Rays, correct?
Yes.
Hopefully they've reset here after a nice off day, and they'll be able to turn it around against the Rays. So pre- and post-game tomorrow. We'll be here for that. Thanks to everybody that joined in the live YouTube chat today. Best way to enjoy the CHGO experience is to subscribe to that CHGO Sports YouTube page. Check it out. Hey, new Shota shirt at allcity.com. Looked pretty good yesterday. We'll see you for pregame tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Until then, fly the W.